now, and I want to give you a little background in terms of who he is and who's talking to you. Brother Wes W C Johnson, retired owner of Apothecary d'Orleans, East African Harvest Restaurant, Wes Johnson and Son Transportation, African Harvest Herb Store, Big Easy Jazz and Cultural Festival T-shirt from 1993 to 2014, executive producer, Our Story Network, radio talk show, WBOK New Orleans from 2003 to 2014, executive producer, Our Story Television Network, New Orleans Access Television, Cox Cable, Channel 76, 2003 to present, chairperson or chairman, Community Unity for Change, creator of People Consent Decree for the New Orleans Police Department, 2010 to present, board member, National Slave Ship Museum, 2013 to present, board member, Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Community League, Black Star Line, Division 466, 2014 to present, Dean of State Representative, 1 Million Conscious Black Voters and Contributors, 2015 to 2016, chairperson of the Membership Committee and Media Committee of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, New Orleans branch, 2016 to 2018. He's the author of the book, Our Story, The Original Holocaust, subtitled The Undisputed Ancestral Truth, Knowledge Kept Secret for 6,000 Years. Brother Wes, I'm going to just speak from the heart in this part. I know that Brother Wes is a very accomplished person, but what his resume does not say is that he is a very consistent, trustworthy, and dependable warrior for black people in the community. I've been knowing Brother Wes for a number of years. The consistency of his strength, the consistency of his courage, the consistency of his purpose for doing for the black community has not wavered. I am pleased to welcome my brother, my friend, warrior to our community once again. And Brother Wes, again, congratulations on your book. And we can start off with the first question. Let us know what's in the back of that brilliant mind that motivated you to write the book.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and I wanted to greet the audience and say, free the land, all power to the people. There are a number of reasons why I published this book. From a very young man, 5 years old, I began to receive the teachings and trainings of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. I began to receive the teachings and training from political experts in our black community at that time. And I was basically put on a path by my grandfather, who decided that there needed to be another generation that was going to carry the mantle of blackness forward. Then as the years moved on, I came into contact with a number of people who understood what blackness really is and why it was necessary for it to be preserved and promoted. I got involved with a number of educators, and I understood their fear of not being able to speak out. I understand over the years in my travels that we are truly at war. We are at war in a number of camps, and we are at war for survival in a number of ways. Most of us would rather turn the other cheek, look the other way, and whatever hardships we are enduring, to hope that things are going to get better. My book basically addresses a lot of the questions that go unanswered. Questions like, why should we be proud to be black? What has blackness done for us or anyone else? Why is it that whites do not like black people? Why is it you have a number who are constantly trying to eliminate us from the face of the earth? And in my travels, I found the answers, and I put them in this publication. Because in order for us to be good warriors, we must first know and understand why we are waging the wars that we're waging. And if we don't have any good reasons for it, then we're wasting our time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Let me ask a few questions, because I want you to zero in on some things. I'm reading the book. It's not a book that you simply read, but it's a book that you study, because some of the concepts that you have are certainly powerful and true. And it must take some effort and some consciousness to digest and to apply those concepts and to understand fully some things that you're saying. I want to read just a few sentences from your book that, and I would like for you to give me your thoughts about it. You said in your book, in chapter 8, things are not going to change until black people decide to cast off the aspirations or the aspersions of white existence and accept the fact that black folks created white folks, and that black folks must return to the point in time of creation if black folks accept to find salvation and freedom. That means giving back everything black folks have embraced from a white race, along with the learned behavior of classism, casteism, racism, individuality, and all the sickness blacks have inherited from whites. Explain that just a little bit more, brother.
Well, first of all, most of us are unaware of the fact that Christianity was created by black people. We don't have the knowledge and understanding that black people were the ones that brought about the ideology, philosophy, and training that the Christian church delivers to us. We all, for the most part, have no idea what the point in time of creation is about. But that is when all things on this planet became reality. And at that time, there were certain laws that were given down by what I refer to as the gods of creation. Those forces that brought about the point in time of creation, they gave certain laws for us to follow that were really simple, that we have gotten away from. And even though black people are the ones that created, authored, promoted Christianity and that belief system, we are also the ones that deviated from the original law. And in order to find that original law, we must find out, first of all, who we are and where we came from and why we're here. What links us to the other links in the chain?
Now that might lead me to the next question, and you can go on from there.
Okay.
The next one, explain this term. I was fascinated with this phrase that you use in your book. It's called intergenerational transfer and inheritance. What
Well,
does that mean in your words? In your point of view?
that means most blacks don't understand what inheritance is. Most blacks have lost the generational transfers that were at one time normal from the elders all the way down to the children. In fact, children were brought up with the knowledge that was freely disseminated by all. The intergenerational ideas came about when I was a part of the 1 million conscious black voters and contributors as a method of delivering the reason why there was a need for another independent black political party. And in that, it talked about how we are not disseminating our powers, our knowledge, and our need to be politically involved, politically astute, and most importantly, seeking the political power that will eventually free us. Because if we have no knowledge of these things, how are we going to know if and when we hit freedom?
Most of us participate in the political process on the system that was given to us and participate in it from a strictly position as a minority. And still somehow we're going to win. How does that fit in with your understanding of the transference of power and inheritance? Is that what you had in mind in terms of helping to clear up in the minds of our people in terms of what kind of politics, what kind of value system that we should be developing and passing on from one generation to another?
Speaking politically, I was involved with the 1 million conscious black voters and contributors. I was also involved with something that was called the Andy Plan that I promoted when I was involved with the NAACP. The plan that was created and voted upon to promote an NAACP that was never moved from point A to point 0 was merely the fact that any group of people can create and surmise a power, political power, to move issues that they have, no matter how large or how small. It's all in the presentation and the strategies used to make those who can make the decisions make that decision for you. In addition, it also showed how we would be able to put people in the positions of political power to make the decisions that was for the people that put them in the positions to be the representatives of. The big problem we have today in this European society is that we are called on to vote. But our votes really never matter because whoever we support joins the other side once they win.
Oh, you mean like black defectors?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So we have not been able to elect people who are going to be thoughtful enough to protect our interests. Example that we have is Obama. I found it interesting that Obama was elected because black folks came together. It took more than just blacks, but it's no question that he was elected because of the power push that black folks gave.
Certainly.
But once he got into office, what happened? He became the president for all people. But what happened with blacks being included in all people? We were the last ones to receive anything, if we received anything at all.
Certainly.
And that's because that's the structure of the system.
Certainly.
He was only allowed to do what he was told to do. And that's not just with a black politician, that's white politicians as well.
Mm-hmm.
Politicians, period, can only do what money tells them to do. And if they don't, they're eliminated.
That's right. And if a president was elected and he was Japanese, he certainly would have a conscious level for the interest for Japanese. If he was Mexican, he would have an interest for Mexicans. It was disappointing that Obama could not even utter the words directly of black folks' interests without severe consequences coming from the very people that's around him that represents the structure that he wants to belong to, which in effect renders us helpless as a politician, goodwill as we may be, well-intended as we may be, but ineffective is the reality of that kind of political setup. So I share with many that Obama may be a good person, and I think history is going to question how good was he for blacks, for the black community. I was disappointed that the conversation or the issue of reparations has not surfaced or even entered the minds. Now, who can read history of black people in America and how we got here and what we have suffered since we've been here could not effectively, make a case for the discussion and movement politically on the issue of reparations. Yet we had none.
Let me say this. Obama did what he was told to do. And if we're going to look at anything, we need to be looking at how is it that Obama couldn't do anything for black folks, yet Donald Trump can do everything that he wants to do.
Yes.
And the racist white supremacists want him to do, and nothing is said and nothing happens.
Yes, sir.
I want to say that we need to put the finger and the accusatory finger on white America. Because even though Trump only has a minority support base, which is supposed to be the white supremacists, the far right white, it is the liberal whites, the conservative whites, who say nothing, do nothing, and allow Trump to get away with everything. So the truth of the matter, from my perspective, is white America, across the board, is as racist as Donald Trump and his supporters, because they do nothing to put him in check and stop him from what he's doing.
No doubt, no doubt. Look, I want to kind of switch the subject just a little, but I want to come back to that because there are some things in your book I want you to touch on, and there's a lot of good information in there. On a lighter note, but yet a serious note, you said something in your book that had a cultural context, and it was relative to the concept of jazz in New Orleans. Would you expand on that? You said that was another name for jazz. And how did that come about? And what was the cultural significance, as you spoke of in your book, around this whole idea of why jazz is in New Orleans and what was it used for historically and culturally?
Well, go back to the beginning. Before jazz, it was called ass music. And that's because it was black folks that was playing. And because we were always referred to in derogatory terms, that's how the ass came up. Because when they finally wanted to send it mainstream or put it in the public purview, they changed it from ass to jazz. Mm-hmm. That was the code that this is black music. Actually, it's been referred to as being the only classical music that America has ever created. Mm-hmm. But it's important to note that black people have always been the creators or originators of everything that whites eventually take credit for. Sure. And to our misunderstanding, we allow them to do it. There's no way in a modern world today that black people should be going along as if everything is okay. You have whites that say they're not racist, but they do nothing about the racist people here. You mentioned something earlier, and I wanted to make this notation about reparations, that Obama said nothing about reparations. I would venture to say we have a large number of blacks and Negroes that are members of the NAACP that do not know that the NAACP in their constitution and bylaws states that what the NAACP is doing is bringing reparations to the people. So when whites hear reparations, they'll say to us, you've already received your reparations. The NAACP openly talks about how their organization is the reparations to your people from this country. And that's in their constitution and bylaws.
Wow.
I know. And I had the same reaction and response when I read it.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that was a piece of news I was not aware of. You mentioned something also in your book, close to this jazz reference, something about second lining, and what that means, and the cultural and historical connotations that we are not aware of as black people. And I found that quite interesting in your book, because I understand clearly, and I'm sure you do, that our cultural understanding, our culture base, is the food for much of the thoughts that we conceive and make decisions and determine, much of our future. Explain what you've shared in your book in terms of the second lining.
Well, it's interesting because second lining used to be almost a weekly event in New Orleans, but since whites have, after Katrina, have come in and taken over New Orleans, they're complaining and they're downplaying the activities of second line. But black people have been following second lines forever, having no understanding where it came from and what it was used for. When you do second lines, you'll have a group of people that are marching and dancing in the streets. You have a band. You have a rope that goes from the beginning to the end, so that the people, they claim to keep people from intruding in to the second line. But the truth of the matter is, second lines were created by plantation owners from the parishes, from the river parishes. They would come to New Orleans to buy slaves from the slave auction. Mm-hmm. The newly acquired slaves, of course, were frightened to death just about. And they had this mass march back to the plantations up the river parishes. Mm-hmm. they put a rope there which tied the slaves, but they had a band that played so the newly acquired slaves would not be, would be more comfortable with making the trip back.
Wow.
Now, the musicians were slaves that had been on the plantations for years. In fact, they began to be second and third generation slaves who were what I refer to as the tamed slaves, to come down to soothe the newly acquired slaves so they wouldn't have any problems taking them back there. And the music would soothe them, and they were able to get them to the plantations with no problem. That's where Second Line came from.
Many, I'm sure, in New Orleans, and certainly I was not aware of that little bit of history.
I know.
Second Lining is a very popular, situation in New Orleans. We have only a few minutes left, but we want to open up the phone lines, and I hope that the number is on the screen. You can call in and join in our conversation. We're going to probably have a part two, to this program, and it'll be open for a lot of the phone calls. But briefly, before we close out this section, brother, I want you to briefly talk to us about the United for Change that you were involved with, that was involved with the police department,
Yes.
where you force actions from the police department to treat our people better in New Orleans. Let us share with us in terms of what that's about.
The short version is, because of the trouble after Katrina with the police just shooting black folks down in the streets, there was a group of people that got shot, some killed, on the Danziger Bridge. One of the victims of death was the brother to a well-known dentist in New Orleans. His other brother was with the brother that got killed, and they ultimately charged him with attempted murder of police. So he had to do everything he could to try to save the one brother and get some justice for the other. So he spent his own money in going to the Justice Department on a monthly, sometimes twice a month basis, until 2010, when Obama sent the Justice Department to New Orleans to quiet everything down, to hush them up. They came for a 2-week period to do an investigation. When they got to New Orleans, Community United for Change, which is made up as an umbrella group of organizations, black grassroots organizations, some of which had 501c3 money, and they did not want to jeopardize that income. So we went out in the front. We took the Justice Department literally by the hand when they came in. We put together 5 public hearings for them where people could come in and testify about the police department. Once they heard that, they extended their stay. They stayed for about 2 years, almost 2 years. They gave a findings letter, which is the end of the investigation and what they determined. And what they determined was the NOPD was an uncivilized organization that was corrupt from top to bottom, and they needed to be placed under consent decree. And that is what has happened, and that's where the NOPD today is. They are operating under a consent decree.
Is that organization still
Yes.
in effect?
Yes.
And the police department still feels the repercussions of that effort? Yes. Listen, we're going to close out this section pretty soon, so I want to ask you just briefly. You said in your book, you made a statement, and I was curious. You said, I think it's entitled, "Who Will Come for Blacks?" Tell me that. Who's coming for us?
Well, if we don't do anything about the trend that is happening. We're going to be just like the so-called Jews in Germany that woke up one morning and had people knocking on their doors, taking them away to concentration camps. And we have no idea who's coming because we don't even know who the players are or who the players could possibly be. Mm-hmm. And until we begin to educate ourselves as to what is happening and going on, we will not be able to determine who will come for us. Now, that was an interesting title to a lecture that I gave many years ago. And I found that the people that were the recipients of it enjoyed it, and they were very curious about it, so it led me into making it part of the book.
Yes. Well, we're going to have another section. I'm not sure how much time we have, and I know time is running short, and we're going to stay here as long as we have to, but there will be a second section. Okay. Okay. So are we running now, or we have to?
It's off of the television set, but we can run for the video, for the DVD.
Okay. All right.
Just crop up those dedications and then the other images.
Okay. This,
Continue talking just for the
okay.
video. If you just want to talk
Okay.
for the video,
Sure.
it'll be for the video.
yeah. Your book also speaks to something that I want to ask you a little later in the program, because I want to permit you enough time to really explain on this. So I'm going to say it now, but I don't want you to respond now.
Okay.
In your book, you dissect the Willie Lynch's letter.
Yes.
And I want you to get more into that,
Okay.
into the impact of that. We also want to approach and have more details in terms of what is the 1 million conscious voters and contributors all about. I need you to elaborate on that somewhat as well. We need to get some points in there. Brother Wes, is there anything in this section that you might want to say that was not asked, that you have on your heart, that you want to share with black people?
Yes. You said earlier at the beginning of the program you were talking about the Creole and the Cajuns and the word nigger. And I want to remind the people that Creole, Cajuns, nigger, Indians are all derogatory terms that are meant to be used as military plots to control the masses of people.
That's right.
Now, we run around and we put labels on ourselves because whites have suggested or have forced it. But one of the things, and you mentioned this earlier about the term nigger being a term that was white folks tried to say that it should be an affectionate term.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of misunderstandings and in our community today about the use of the word. Some say it shouldn't be a part of our vocabulary anymore. Others say, like myself, I don't know why. I mean, it was okay for white folks to call black folks niggers, but now it's not good for niggers to call each other niggers because it could be an endearing term. But I want to know why, for those that feel that it's a term that shouldn't be used, and if they are refraining themselves from using it, why are they still using the word nigger? I'm sorry, why are they still using the word Indian?
Mm-hmm.
Or why are they still using the word Cajun or Creole? Because they all mean the same thing.
Right.
They all are used the same way. So if we're going to eliminate one, we need to eliminate all.
That's right.
Don't pick and choose.
I had this conversation just recently with someone who, and we made a very good point. the person was talking with me about some of the same things that you're speaking of too, and said, well, listen, why do black folks so boldly says Cajun, and when they want to speak to the issue of why the word nigger is derogatory, we don't want to say nigger, we want to say the N word.
Oh, yeah.
We
I
say
think
we
that's
want to say
worse.
the N word because if and the person was making a point, and I concur 100%. If nigger and Cajun mean the same, and they're both historically derogatory terms, then why is it that you boldly can say Cajun, but you don't want to say nigger to explain the point in terms of what nigger is all about?
We on live for the other show. We can start the second show.
Okay.
Yeah, we started the other show minute 9, so I'll come to you. Y'all ready?
Mm-hmm. We're going to go over that point too. In New Orleans, as we spoke of that, the connotation of the word Creole and Cajun and nigger, they bombard us with niggers here, with the word Cajun here.
Yes.
And they want to use the N word as though it's all that and bad, and but Cajun and nigger mean the same, but they make us think that they have a sense of respect for us by saying, don't say the word nigger, say N word. But we boldly say Cajun and we label ourselves Cajun. In New Orleans, I lived there, as you know, for about 5 years. New Orleans is inundated with the Creole concept. Not knowing and not understanding fully the impact of New Orleans' political system and social system until I got there, that there's a distinct difference between many lighter-skinned blacks and dark-skinned blacks in terms of how well and how mobile they can be within the city. And I know it's probably a little better now, but still the concept of Creole is being jammed down black people. Now, indigenous black folks, conscientious black folks, is rejecting that. Why is it that we feel we need to have a substitute term to identify our beautiful black and African self? One thing I like in your book, you made very clear that regardless of what you say, what you go, where you go, what you do, you're going to still find out that black folks are the original people of the earth.
Right.
So anything else that you might want to call yourself, if you defined it historically and culturally long enough, you'll find out that it's a remnant of something black.
Yes.
And it came from blackness. So here we are bombarded with the concept of Cajun and labeling everything and everybody's Cajun. Black folks' accomplishment, black folks' history, black culture, and many of us go along with it because we assimilate not knowing the history. You know what I've come to learn, though, Brother Wes, is that many of us either don't understand or we refuse to dissect the real meaning of the words colonialism, imperialism, cultural genocide. Those are powerful words. And when you begin to understand and dissect what colonialism is, as long as we don't break the chains of colonialism, wherever it is, that is the food for white supremacy, we will never be able to act out of the context of who we are. Now, I know in your book, you make mention of some things, and I want to, because it's all the same, and I want to be able to make sure that at least we get some other points out there, because we're going to come back and we're going to tie into it. You made a statement in your book about religion. You stated that religion has a double-bladed sword for black people.
Sword, yeah.
That's right, double-bladed sword for black people. Elaborate on that point for a few minutes.
Well, religion is double-bladed from the simple reasons is we created it. We started it. That's the one edge. The other edge is that it is being constantly used against us. We have not been given credit for creating it. In fact, Catholics would have you believe that the Jews and the Greeks and Romans were the ones that created Jesus Christ and Christianity. But they will not tell you, the Catholics will not tell you that the first church, the first Christian church, the universal church, was in Mesopotamia. And from top to bottom and everything in between was all black.
That's right.
In fact, I play with Baptists a lot because I'll ask them, what was the first mission of the missionary church? And of course they don't know. And if they knew, they wouldn't tell you.
Yes, sir. I want to take this time now to invite the callers to call in. The lines are open now. We certainly would welcome your call. Get involved. If you have any questions or comment, please call. I think the number is going to appear on the screen in a minute. Please call, get involved, and ask your question. Brother Wes, I'm taking you all these places, and I hope you don't mind because, like I said, I want people to have at least an idea what are some of the subject matters that you are tackling in your book. As obviously we can't cover everything in detail, but I want to go through these different areas so that they would get an idea of the sustenance that you are addressing in your book. One of the areas that you cover that I find to be quite interesting and certainly valid for us to discuss now is that you broke down the evil concepts of the Willie Lynch's letter and how those concepts seem to have impacted black people today and are still in use. How do you see those concepts affecting the black man, the black woman, the black family, and ultimately black existence from your perspective?
Well, first of all, there's been a lot of controversy about the Willie Lynch letters, and they have finally, I guess, rested upon the saying that it was a hoax, that the Willie Lynch letters was created by someone in modern times, and they were just using that to demonstrate how severely we were treated. But if you look at the Willie Lynch letters for what you have, everything in there is basically fact. We were treated that way. I mean, all of the things that is mentioned in the Willie Lynch letter actually happened.
Yes, sir.
So if that's the case, and the only thing that is really fabricated is that it was a white boy that was on an island and brought the other ones together and told them, this is how you tame a slave. This is how you program a slave. Then we need to understand that what happened to us then is continuing to happen to us today. And there's in psychology and psychiatry, there have been studies that prove this out, many I've mentioned in the book. Now, when we deal with the Willie Lynch letters, I gave an example of modern day phenomena that creates the same end. And that was with the wealthy Patty Hearst.
That's right.
From the Hearst fortunes. Patty Hearst joined the Black Panther Party. No, excuse me. Patty Hearst claims that she was kidnapped. She was held captive and was brainwashed by her captives to go into a bank and rob the bank. They came up with a term for her, which is called the Stockholm Syndrome, which is a thing that actually happened in Stockholm, Sweden, where someone went into a bank to rob the bank, held the people captive, and they They impressed upon their captors so much, they scared them to death to the point that the captors was protecting the people that kidnapped them. That's what they used in Patty Hearst's defense to get her off from murder and bank robbery. Now, she served a little time, not much at all. She was found guilty of lesser charges. But the bottom line is they went ahead and they said that Patty Hearst did not willfully do this, that she was under duress when it happened. If that is the case, why is it and how is it black folks are not under duress? Because we have never, ever.
Let me take this caller. Caller, you're on the air. You have a comment or question?
I'd like to make a comment. I would like to say this is a very informative program that is on the night of football fans. But however, I can say that it is a beautiful, beautiful thing to bring such subjects up, especially for our citizens, because that is our children's day to the that know what the Holocaust experiences really cost. This world, what it has done for us in this world. I would like to say, when we purchased the book, Brother Takuna to get the Black I Am, Cajun I'm Not Good, and
Caller, I'm not sure whether it's on our end or your end, but you're breaking up on this end. We're not hearing you clearly. If you are not finished with your comment, could you hang up and maybe try back, call back? Thank you.
We will do that. Thank you very much. We're watching.
Thank you. You're not coming in clearly. You're breaking up.
Or getting more knowledge about this book, The Original Holocaust.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, caller.
Much.
Thank you. We were talking about the Willie Lynch syndrome. You know, the full extent of the teachings and Let's Make a Slave, they suggest some very strong psychological damage has been done to the woman and the men, which have been perfected fact. I want you to talk and elaborate on that a little bit. Caller, you on the air. Comment or question?
Yes, I have a comment. Thank y'all so very much. A very powerful program. I have a two-part question.
Yeah.
My first part would be directed to Brother West. Brother West, in your book, Our Story, The Original Holocaust, you spoke about the Willie Lynch letter. I would like to know, do you actually believe that is factual or mythology with the Willie Lynch letter? And Brother Takuna, dealing with Cajun I am, Creole I'm not, Black I am, the taking the knee that Kaepernick done on behalf of the injustice that's dealing in the football arena. Do you think that I'm not into the football at all, but do you think that we can continue with his legacy, being that he is standing the test of time, sir?
Yes, I'll let Brother West respond to the question first.
To your question, yes, the Willie Lynch letter is factual, and I was talking earlier. I used the comparison to Patty Hearst and her trials in which he claimed happened to her. Same thing with the Willie Lynch letter. If we look at the fact that now, today, PTSD is something that is recognized as being a sickness, an illness, then when are we going to start getting treatment? And I say we, I'm talking about black folk, for PTSD after 400 years of slavery, after 100 years of Jim Crowism, after the current status of Donald Trumpism. When are we going to start receiving some kind of help that's going to help us to cope with the things we've had to go through all of these years?
Caller, to answer your question, if I understand it fully and completely, my support for Kaepernick comes from the fact that he had the mere courage and strength to stand up for what he believed in. See, what is missing in the black community, oftentimes we stand for things when there is nothing to lose. Sometimes we stand for things when we have a certain level of support that comes from the European community that says it's okay. So we get our courage from that. Kaepernick had millions of dollars to lose, and he stood for a principle. They tried to make it out about the flag, but he was talking about the brutality and the unjust treatment and the killing of young black men. And that as a black man, you know, he took exceptions to that and done something. I wish more of our athletes and our entertainers would be as brave and be as bold. I know that LeBron James has stepped out and have said some things. You have some of these athletes in the past who have done some things and they've been buried by the system. You don't hear anything of them. Kaepernick, I believe, with time, will be recognized and, you know, for his strength and for his courage. And certainly we should support not only Kaepernick, but we should support the strength and the image in which he's trying to set, you know, for us. You may not agree with everything that he does. You may not agree with everything that he's about. You know, we may not agree with everything what Dr. King stood for and what he said and how he said it. But one thing we cannot disagree on is the fact that whatever Dr. King believed, and we just celebrated his anniversary, we cannot dispute the fact that he was willing to die for what he believed. You know, he was willing to demonstrate, you know, even to the point of death, that this is the principles that he believed in. The problem with Dr. King, just like a problem with a lot of our young men and women who stand up, is the fact that you've hinted toward it earlier. Everything that we do that's good, white folks first condemn, then they molest it, then they come up with something else, a version of it. So Dr. King, from 55 to the first part of 65, is a different Dr. King from the middle part of 65 to 68. Right. So white folks will not teach you the truth about Dr. King. They will not tell you the truth about Kaepernick and the reason why he stood up. They want to create a smokescreen and make it about a flag, you know. But the principles in which he stands for, the principles in which he knelt for, I support. Yes. You know, I support. And I support any athletes. I only wish one day that there'll be one or two brave black brother and sister right here in Lafayette who would stand up at UL on the football field or basketball court or the baseball field or track field and say, I will not play if you call me Cajun. You see, on the principle of understanding the negativity and the danger of submitting and capitulating to colonialism.
Another thing that they have to remember, excuse me, what happened to Kaepernick, what has happened to King, what has happened to Malcolm, what has happened to all of the heroes and sheroes that are one way or another gunned down or taken out of their positions. Yes, they're taken out of those positions because they dare speak up.
Sure.
But more importantly, what happens to them is to show others not to follow in their footsteps.
Modern day buck breaking.
That's right. And we have to realize if this is what whites do not want, that's what we should be pouring down their throats.
And you know, I asked you about the Willie Lynch's teaching, and part of that is the understanding of the psychological games that they actually introduce in order to achieve the results that you just described. And it's called modern day bug breaking. But in the Willie Lynch's teachings, How to Make a Slave as well, you would see is that it's described as that the most aggressive, the most outspoken, the most fearless black man on the plantation was brutalized, killed, and maimed in front of the women and the young in order to set an example. There's a phrase that goes around in the circle of consciousness when you deal with people and that understand what we're talking about. There's often a phrase that we understand that white folks have adapted many years ago and said, what's the best way to control a nigger? Say, control him before he's born. And so they go after the woman. They create a psychological dilemma in the woman's mind and understanding. They upset her psychological state and her reaction to her man, to society, to herself. And they put her in a situation where when they get through with the process of breaking her psychological and dependence on her man, they then make her, they upset the apple cart and they make her absorb the psychological responsibility and the social responsibility that ordinarily the man or her mate would be carrying. Let's take this call. Caller, you're on the air. You have a comment or question?
Yes, great show tonight, Brother Takuna.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Great to see Brother Wes in the studio.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Where do I start, Brother Takuna? I brought something up to you. You say maybe Brother Wes could be more clear or get his perspective on
Yes.
the issue. And I brought up the other day about so much classism in the black community. And I want to specifically focus on the black community.
Yes, sir.
Because our classism is different. Our people seem to not understand we all come from the same place. We all have made it off the backs of people before us. And they seem, once they get up out that hole they come from, or that trench, or whatever they like to say, they seem to forget where they come from. And classism is a big thing in the black community that's holding us back from achieving certain goals for the black community. So I want you to touch on that. And one other issue is what the sister brought up about the NFL. People don't understand that the move with Donald Trump is not necessarily the problem. It's his enablers. We got a lot of enablers here in the city of Lafayette that pull for Donald Trump mentality. We got a lot of enablers in New Orleans. We got a lot of New Orleans Saints fans who are enablers of the Donald Trump mentality. I'm saying that. We got a lot of people in America who are enablers of the Donald Trump mentality. Donald Trump could have not exist in a vacuum. He had to be put there. And people don't understand that whole NFL symbolism thing, because he spoke today. Trump spoke today about the NFL. One of the things he required those players to respect the American flag and to respect the soldiers and all. These two things are symbolism things. The American flag symbolized white supremacy here. The service members symbolize the power behind the white supremacy. So we don't understand that as black folks. I'd like to get your analysis on that, Brother Takuna and Brother West. Thank you so much.
Well, mine is going to be brief, and I'm going to let Brother West answer, because I know he's going to be more in detail. But I just want to bring to the surface the point that you're making. Just before coming here, I watched the beginning of the game because I wanted to see just how they were going to conduct themselves. It was disappointing to see that Gladys Knight sang the Black National Anthem. Then white folks went ahead and they sought out two, I think, culturally and historically disconnected, beautiful young black girls, to black women to sing America the Beautiful. How insulting. How insulting that is to black people. How can you be in America, be black, sing America the Beautiful, and sing the Black National Anthem, in this particular climate with Trump, and not understanding the third verse of the national anthem pretty much says, we got you enslaved, we're going to keep you enslaved, and if you try to get out, we're going to bomb you.
Yeah.
So how disconnected we are from history and culture. And I love Gladys Knight. And I must say, I lost a lot of respect for her because it's another icon that has been set up to be, to be damaged in the minds of much of the conscious community, the conscious black community. And you could see what they're doing. They want to sell the idea, hey, there's a few rebel rousers that are upset about this. Black people love us. Black people love America. Black people are unaware or is aware, but there are more important things. And this is what I spoke to in the beginning of the show when I spoke to black defectors. I found that it is very difficult to move forward on any positive agenda because black folks have always been used to serve as an alternative to self-determination and strength. White folks seeks us out. And they either get us with monies, they either get us with promises of political favors or political positions. There's some self-serving agenda that we actually, pursue. The same thing with the rappers. We talk about the word nigger. We talk about this, but white folks, mostly Jews, own the music industry. They give our young people millions of dollars to sing songs with the word nigger and call our women out of their names and disgrace, the black family. So money has been the motivation. And when you tell some of our brothers who are uninitiated to a proper sense of history and culture, they say, well, hey man, I'm getting mines, I'm making millions. What do you have? But those who perpetuate this kind of behavior among black people already know, no matter how many millions you get with that kind of thinking, it's just a matter of time. We're going to have it all. We're going to have it all back.
Oh, yeah. There's no question to that. In response to the question that he raised about classism, let me say this to you, my brother. Classism was created, it's maintained by the three major religious philosophies in the world: Judaism, Catholicism, and Christianity. And when I say Christianity, you have to understand Christianity is essentially the same as Islam, but it's culturally different. So we have religion teaching and preaching classism. So how do you get away from classism if you're embracing your religion? How do you get away from the ills? Because Christianity was the authority for enslaving the blacks from Africa. Sure. Islam finds slavery is something that they give a person as a option to death. If you'll be my slave, then I'll let you live. Mm-hmm. So we have to realize and understand we are upholding and maintaining the tenets of slavery and classism or classism, because classism and slavery are basically the same things. And I used to talk about the similarities between communism, capitalism, and socialism. All three are basically the same.
That's right.
The differences are this. General Motors manufactures the Chevrolet, the Buick, and the Cadillac. Now, when you look at Chevrolet, Buick, and Cadillac, you're looking at classism. All owned by General Motors. Mm-hmm. Socialism, capitalism, and communism is all controlled by white supremacy. So, if you pick one or the other, you're still upholding white supremacy. So how are we going to get past all of this if we keep embracing them and holding them close to our chest so they don't slip away.